2025 is nearly done, so I thought this would be the perfect time to talk about the 5 games you should play as the year wraps up. Now before we dive in, this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, and that's completely fine. So without further ado, starting off with number 5. I didn't say 5 new games now, did I? The only good games we've gotten so far this year are Mafia: The Old Country and Expedition 33. What's next? Battlefield 6? Or maybe Ghost of Yotei? I mean, you'll check those out anyway. So instead, this is a list of solid games that you can revisit right now. Games that will scratch that itch while you wait for the couple of good ones coming out next year. Games that are free of garbage politics or forced messaging. So yeah, starting off at number 5 with Mad Max. This is a pretty unique take on the post-apocalyptic genre. Mad Max takes place in a version of Australia where collective shout came into power. Now first things first, the game is visually stunning and the world building is solid. The gameplay, the acting, performances, everything is top notch and it still holds up to this day. The open world, despite being a barren, desolate wasteland, is hauntingly beautiful. Now yes, the world is pretty much empty, but you'll occasionally run into survivors and wastelanders. Your hideout is also populated by some NPCs and that makes it feel a bit more alive. And not just that, the camps and any other locations don't feel copy-pasted, so it never seems like you've seen the same place twice. The map offers a lot of variety, which is pretty surprising since it's all basically just desert. Now even though the game suffers from the formulaic Ubisoft-style open world, which I'll talk more about in just a bit, the world itself is massive, unique, and hostile. Like seriously. Almost everything in this place is trying to kill you. There are enemy factions, lack of resources, and harsh weather conditions like sandstorms. And these sandstorms aren't just background effects either. They affect the gameplay and are actually dangerous. It can get annoying at times because you have to find a shelter and wait it out, but that really makes the world feel like an unforgiving hell, and that perfectly depicts the world of Mad Max. However, that Ubisoft style open world is one of the weaknesses of the game. There are vantage points to uncover stuff on the map, but instead of towers, you've got these hot air balloons. Then there are these enemy outposts, camps, and convoys, the typical box checking stuff. Now story-wise, this game is a standalone story. You don't need to watch any of the Mad Max movies for this. Max is a guy who's trying to survive and get to the mythical plains of silence, away from all the madness. But after he gets attacked by an enemy faction and his car is taken, he'll have to get another one to continue his journey. And you also meet some interesting side characters along the way as well. But yeah, the whole premise of the game is to survive Australia and pimp your ride while doing so. Now the gameplay is both the strongest and the weakest part of Mad Max. The hand-to-hand combat is hands down one of the best parts of the game. Now you might have heard people say it's ripped straight from the Arkham games, but that's not the case. The combat in the Arkham games was smooth, stylish, and pretty fast-paced. But in this game, it's much slower, grounded, beautifully choreographed, and quite brutal. Sure, the mechanics are similar to the Arkham games, but every punch feels heavy, and when you stab someone with a shiv or blast them with a shotgun, it's insanely satisfying. The enemies are aggressive. They don't wait around to get hit. If you're stuck in an animation taking one guy out, you're gonna get cheap shotted by another one. Yes, it's annoying, but it makes sense and it adds to the realism and makes it more challenging. And you know what? We really need more games with this type of combat. Because to be very honest, I'm pretty much tired of the weird choppy hack and slash combat of the newer games where the enemies just tank hits without flinching. Then the second best thing of course is the driving. And for a studio that worked on a game like Just Cause, I didn't expect the driving to be any good. But it really surprised me. I wonder why they couldn't just use the same driving mechanics in Just Cause games, but anyways, the cars feel heavy and aggressive, exactly how the cars in a Mad Max game should. The combat in cars is pretty straightforward, but still is pretty tough and a lot of fun. It's super satisfying when you crash an enemy car and there's explosions and debris flying around everywhere, and does it look beautiful. These are some of the best explosions I've seen in games. But anyways, of course this is not anywhere near a perfect game and there are some problems. First off, upgrading stuff can be a pain in the ass. The grind is real, and personally I'm not a fan of the progression in this game, but at least the game doesn't have microtransactions. Then there's the repetitive gameplay. You're either fighting dudes on foot or fighting dudes in cars. The game does kinda change things up a bit, but there are no real action set pieces. Clearing out enemy camps is fun though. You have to scope out a base and decide your approach. And what really raises the stakes is that if you mess it up, you can't just retry instantly. You have to wait until the cooldown is over. That really adds to the challenge, but it does get old after some time. This is the reason why the game wasn't well received back in 2015. But that's not the only reason, cause just look at the slew of games that came out that year. The competition was crazy, but considering the state of gaming these days, if Mad Max dropped today, it would be considered one of the best games of 2025. Now here's the thing. Mad Max is a pretty solid game. It offers something different, something unique, and that's why I put it on this list. If you don't rush it and just take your time to immerse yourself into this world, it really hits. I can already hear the Arkham City fans losing it, but just hear me out here. Batman Arkham Origins is another massively underrated game, and to be honest, I never really understood the hate it got back when it came out. Now yes, Arkham City was also a great game, and choosing between the two was really tough, but for me, Origins wins by a hair. And yes, both of these games are much better than Arkham Knight for obvious reasons. Now I won't pretend the game is perfect, but I personally believe that it's the best one in the series. Maybe it's because it shows Batman's early years when he's still more of a myth, a vigilante who's also wanted by the cops. The story, the acting, the music, the graphics, everything was top notch. Roger Craig Smith absolutely nailed it as a younger and angrier version of Batman. This version of Bruce Wayne really felt like he was consumed by vengeance, and the game did a great job of putting you in the shoes of not just Batman, but Bruce Wayne as well. The premise of the game was pretty simple yet compelling. There's a hefty bounty on Batman's head, put out by Black Mask, and he's forced to fight all sorts of assassins across an empty snow-covered Gotham, which looked beautiful in my opinion. Now the story was pretty good, but the Joker twist was kinda stupid, and this game would have been much better without the Joker showing up. Cause Black Mask and Bane were doing perfectly fine as the main antagonist of the game. Especially Bane in Arkham Origins is easily the best version of Bane out there. This wasn't just a dumb brute we usually get, this was a smart, calculating monster. And the boss fight with Bane on Titan was scary as hell, and I still remember how it kept me at the edge of my seat. I would go even as far as to say that it was the scariest boss fight in the entire series. In fact, all the boss fights were great. Firefly, Deadshot, the regular Bane fight, the fight with Electrocutioner, even though just 5 seconds long, were all super fun. And of course, my personal favorite was the fight with Deathstroke. It was just so badass to see Batman and Slade go toe to toe, unlike Arkham Knight where they go tank to tank for some reason. And you know what? Appreciating the Arkham Origins boss fights becomes even easier after playing Arkham Knight, because they really dropped the ball there. But anyways, one more standout feature of this game that often gets overlooked was the real detective work. The crime scene investigations, the holographic reconstructions, scrubbing through frames to find tiny clues, actually solving a crime scene instead of just scanning IDs or random stuff lying around. And it actually made you feel like the world's greatest detective. I just love that. But with all that said, what's the problem? Why did this game get so much hate back in the day? Well, Origins was a little too similar to Arkham City. They reused half the map, added a new section, connected with a bridge that was a pain in the ass to cross, and then just covered everything with snow. The combat and the overall gameplay was mostly the same with nothing new to offer, and to me at least it all felt a tiny bit less polished. Now the thing is, this game was just there to fill the content gap and keep the quarterly profits rolling while Rocksteady worked on Arkham Knight. But still, to be honest, these minor flaws don't outweigh the positives. Creative boss fights, the stealth, the atmosphere, hanging out in the Batcave, the in-depth crime scene investigations, and a solid story that made me feel connected to Bruce Wayne, all of that makes Arkham Origins stand tall. So if you skipped this game when it first came out, give it a chance now, and I'm sure you'll love it. First of all, this game is dropped at gorgeous, and it still puts a lot of newer titles to shame. Uncharted 4 is easily one of the best linear action-adventure games that I've ever played, and to be honest, it was the last good game that came out of Naughty Dog. The acting, the graphics, the gameplay, and of course those crazy action set pieces really show what the guys at Naughty Dog are capable of. If only they could get rid of this boss babe foot worshiper. Now of course, this game isn't flawless. The story isn't anything groundbreaking, it's okay for the most part, but it's good enough to keep you invested. The real strength comes from the characters, because of course they're all well written and the acting performances are top notch. Where the game really shines though is the presentation. Graphically, this game was and still actually is on another level, and the attention to detail is just insane. Nate's clothes get dirty over time. If he falls into the mud, it sticks to him. If he dives into the water, he actually gets soaked and stays wet for a while. The textures, the rope physics, the environment, they really nailed everything. Then there are these little animations like Nate extending his hand to brush against a wall close by. And overall, everything is pretty smooth, and Nate actually moves and feels like a real person. It's that level of polish that makes Uncharted 4 look better than most of the so-called AAA games coming out in 2025. The second thing is the gameplay. The stealth and gunplay were pretty solid and satisfying, and even though the hand-to-hand combat was a bit weak, it was still smooth, well choreographed, and pretty fun to watch. Then there were these huge open-ended levels like the 12 Towers sequence in Madagascar. That was hands down my favorite part of the game. Whenever I think about Uncharted 4, that's the first thing that comes to mind. The off-road driving was a blast, and the driving mechanics were surprisingly good for a game where you drive a car only a couple of times. And speaking of cars, the insane action set pieces and the crazy high-speed car chases really keep you at the edge of your seat. Now, unlike the earlier Uncharted games, which always had some kind of supernatural twist, Uncharted 4 keeps things realistic and grounded. So yeah, there are no monsters or ancient curses. That might be a turnoff for some fans, but for me, it actually made me appreciate this game even more. That magic shit is better suited for Tomb Raider anyways, but that's just my opinion. Now, story-wise, I do have one gripe. The whole long-lost brother thing with Sam kind of felt a bit off. And the whole twist about him lying and making up the Hector Alcazar story just didn't land. Cause Sam shows up out of nowhere after all those years and then lies to his younger brother just to drag him into another treasure hunt. That felt kinda cheap and I didn't really like it. But the thing is, Sam himself was still a likable character, and I actually wanted him to carry the torch. But of course, that's not happening cause this guy just hates men. Anyways, Uncharted 4 did a great job of wrapping up Nate's story, and while it's not a perfect game, it's still a masterpiece. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is easily one of my favorite games of all time. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've never played the first two games or read any of the books. Witcher 3 was my first real step into this world, and even though I barely knew the lore outside of a couple of YouTubes I watched before jumping into this game, I loved every second of it. Geralt quickly became one of my most favorite characters ever. The dude's a total badass, and all credits to Doug Cockle who nailed the role. And it's not just him. The game is packed with memorable characters, each with their own ambitions, agendas, and personalities. No one ever felt like they were there just to check a box. Everyone mattered to the story, which is something I can't really say for most of the games coming out these days. Now, what really blew me away was the quest design. How some of the side quests tie back seamlessly into the main story, and you don't even realize it until much later. And the choices actually matter and make a huge difference. A decision you make in the earlier missions can have consequences later on in the game. On top of that, some choices really make you stop and think, what now? There are no clear right or wrong answers. Whatever you choose, something is always at stake. It's like, do you save this life or that one? And the game never really lets you save both. So yeah, the choices actually carry a lot of weight, they actually matter, and they're not just there to give you an illusion of choice, unlike some other games. Anyways, enough about the choices. The game was filled to the brim with interesting stuff to do. There were side activities like contracts where you'd haggle with poor peasants to take care of a monster that ate their children. Then there were fistfight tournaments, horse racing, treasure hunting, whoring, and of course the best and the most addictive one, Gwent. Hands down, Gwent is the best game within a game I've ever played. I remember sinking hours into it just chilling and listening to the absolute bangers in the background. Speaking of which, the soundtrack in Witcher 3 is phenomenal. I still remember wandering around Skilligate just because of the hauntingly beautiful music, and I still listen to some of its tracks even today. Then there's the open world itself. The world design was incredible. The atmosphere, the details, all of it. Just wandering around and stumbling into random events or hidden stories always felt rewarding. It felt like the world has something new waiting for you around every corner. And this is the type of world design that most of the modern AAA titles are missing. Now the thing is, as much as I love this game, there are things I'm not a huge fan of. First, it's the combat. It was not bad, but sometimes Geralt felt like he was gliding around and really a nightmare to control. And don't even get me started on the fall damage. I mean, this guy is a mutated monster slayer, but can't even drop 3 meters without dying. One more thing that bugged me was the endless inventory management. The swords, the gear, the potion builds, it's just too much sometimes. But that's not just a Witcher problem, that's an RPG problem in general. I personally don't have the time anymore to sit in menus and compare swords that are going to be useless 4 hours later. I just want to play the game. But these are just minor flaws. The Witcher 3 is still an absolute masterpiece. And to be honest, I've been thinking about replaying it for like the 5th time while I wait for the Blood of Dawnwalker to drop next year. I can very comfortably say that RDR2 is my favorite game of all time, period. Out of every game I've played in the last 10 years, I might have sunk the most hours into this game, and it's also the only game that my late grandfather actually enjoyed watching me play. The graphics, the gameplay, the open world, the music, the story, everything was just perfect. And to be honest, talking about all that in this format doesn't do it justice. Each and every aspect of this masterpiece deserves a separate video. I mean, this game is 7 years old now, and still holds up to not only newer games but even vertical slice tech demos. But anyways, let's start with the story. The story might look simple on paper, but the way it's told, through some of the most rich and well-written characters I've ever seen, makes it one of the best stories. Arthur Morgan is easily one of the most believable and well-written main protagonists in gaming. The side missions like Debt Collections or the Stranger missions really show how nuanced his character writing actually is. You really see how Arthur grows as a character and how he changes throughout the game. You watch him grow from a cold-blooded killer to someone who'd go to any length to protect the people he loves, even trying to make up for the wrongs he's done in the past. And just like the name suggests, at its core, this story really is about redemption. Now, it's not just Arthur. All the other characters are really well written and compelling, and most of them deserve a video of their own. This type of nuanced storytelling and character writing is very, very rare. In fact, it's non-existent in AAA open-world games like this. Now, to be very honest, after playing GTA 5, and since I hadn't played RDR1, I wasn't expecting that level of storytelling from Rockstar, so this was a pleasant surprise. Anyways, the attention to detail this game had was mind-blowing, and man, Rockstar really turned that shit up to 11. I mean, who would even notice if the horse balls didn't shrink in cold weather? Who would even complain if Arthur's hair and beard didn't grow with time? But Rockstar went ahead and added all those little details that most of the players wouldn't even notice. The dynamic weather, the entire ecosystems, the realistic behavior of animals and human NPCs, the world reacting to your choices. This wasn't just a big map with icons. Rockstar created a living, breathing world. And even now, 7 damn years later, people are still finding new stuff. I mean, just look at this channel. They made a dozen videos just covering the details in RDR2, while they cover most of their games in just a couple of videos. And that's actually crazy. That not only shows the passion, but the respect the guys at Rockstar have for their players' time and money. While most of their studios are trying to sell absolute garbage games for $70, this game still blows them out of the water. But of course, like any other game, this game also has its flaws. Like the hand-to-hand combat is pretty weak, the mission design can feel a bit repetitive sometimes, since most of the time you're just riding your horse and shooting people in the face. Now, to be fair, Rockstar does mix it up with some stealth here and there, rescue missions, some slower, more laid-back moments with the gang, and some action set pieces. One more thing that people complain about in this game is that the overall pacing is much slower than most other open worlds. You can't even explore the map until Chapter 2. The game doesn't even let you sprint around the camp. You're forced to walk, and that really slows things down. And even though I wasn't a fan of that at first, I ended up actually appreciating it, because if it wasn't for that, I would have missed a lot of random encounters at camp. So yeah, for me at least, the slow pacing worked. It gave me the time to settle into this world and really connect with the characters, and that made the experience even better. But of course, at the end of the day, all this is subjective, and I get it if RDR2 isn't your thing. Even I slept on this game for months, but when I finally gave it a go, I fell in love with it. RDR2 is not just a game, it's an experience, and if I had the chance to wipe my memory clean just so I could experience it for the first time again, I'd do it. This game has really raised the bar for me. It has spoiled me to a point where I have a really hard time liking the other so-called AAA open world games. So yes, Red Dead Redemption 2 is a freaking masterpiece, and I plan to play it for like the 4th time while I patiently wait for GTA 6 to drop, which is most probably getting delayed to fall next year. Anyways, I'll leave you at that. Do let me know in the comments down below if you agree with this list. I'm also really looking forward to seeing your recommendation as well. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, take care.